guys, it's Kesara, and in this video we're going to be reading and reviewing Blood Over Brighthaven by Wang. I have at this point already finished the book, but don't worry, I have a full spoiler-filled vlog ready for you guys. I'm so happy books like this exist. Let's just put it that way. I loved this so much. It is definitely the type of book that I wish I had when I was younger. I just love seeing more of these books come out lately because this book really does remind me a lot of Babel by Kuang. They're obviously different because Babel is an alternate history fantasy novel, while Blood Over Brighthaven is more of like an actual high fantasy novel set like a completely different world. But a lot of the themes that they both explore are very similar. So if you like Babel, I think Blood Over Brighthaven is definitely a really good option for you as well. I personally like Blood Over Brighthaven a lot more, partially because I'm more of a fantasy reader and I just like being more in a fantasy world, but I also really love these characters. I felt like I really got to know these characters and be in the story alongside with them. I also liked that these characters were not just good characters, if that makes sense. Like, they were unlikable, they had flaws at certain aspects, and yet despite being unlikable, they were just so lovable and I loved them. I also really loved the magic system in this. I think the magic system was quite intricate and interesting and well developed. I think the writing was really well done as well. There's one particular scene in where the magic is described that I still think about, like I still picture. I do think if you've read her other book, The Sword of Kaigen, I think she does that a little bit better in The Sword of Kaigen. I wouldn't really compare The Sword of Kaigen to Blood Over Brighthaven. I think they're just like two completely different books. And while I did give them both 5 stars, I think The Sword of Kaigen is still my favorite book by this author. But Blood Over Brighthaven is still really good and I'm glad to have read it. It's following 2 characters, Sayana, who is a female mage and she wants to become the first female high mage in history. And then there's also Tomo, who is a Quen. He's from the Kaigen tribe, and in the very first chapter, like the very first chapter, his entire tribe is killed except for him and his niece as they try to get to Safe Haven, or this Bright Haven. And his story in particular I found quite tragic at times. I actually felt like that very first chapter was a bit much, but other than that, I ended up loving this book so much. So we'll go ahead and go into the vlog, which it is a completely spoiler-filled vlog. So if you haven't read this book, highly recommend going out and reading this book first and then coming back, and at the end I'll get into a more spoiler discussion of all of the things that I love about this book. So I just finished chapter 5 of Blood Over Brighthaven by Wang, and I'm enjoying this so much. It was kind of a slow start for me, and I think most people who read this book is gonna be like, what do you mean it's kind of a slow start? Like 30 people die in the first chapter, which is why it was a slow start for me, because I do not like action in the very first chapter of a book, especially like that crazy of action in the very first chapter. I had originally picked this up on audio, and because it was just so action-packed in the first chapter, I actually had to put it down because I did not like it whatsoever. I reread it, I liked it better reading it physically, but it still like kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I generally like to get to know my characters better before putting them in such dire situations. But at the same time, I kind of get why the author did this, because it is important backstory for us to know about Tomo. Like, now that I'm getting to know him better, that scene is just way more interesting to me. So I'm excited to get to know these characters, and I do want to see how Tomo's niece is introduced to the other characters in the story, because she is like one of the only people from Tomo's past that lived through that first chapter, and I want to see how like her injury that she got, like her eye, I think it was damaged by whatever it was that was killing them. So I want to see how that plays out. I'm really intrigued by that part of the first chapter. I feel like that should have been more of like a prologue rather than a chapter 1. It might have been a prologue. Was it a prologue? I mean, it says 1, a field of flowers. I feel like it felt more like a prologue to me than an actual chapter 1, but I kind of did like it. The longer I read this book, the more I like that chapter. I feel like Skiona, I hope that's how you pronounce her name. I have no idea, but I feel like her first chapter was kind of what I would have wanted from this book as the first chapter, because I absolutely loved it. First of all, Fiona's a character. I love her so much already. She feels like a real person. Like, I know people who think and act the way that she does. She's so ambitious and so driven in a way that's completely different from me. I'm not like that at all. Because she's so driven to like this very kind of like narrow focus, she kind of forgets about other things that are also important, about the people that are actually around her, and that's generally what I focus on a little bit more. So it's fun to see something from like someone who has similar thinking style, but completely different application of that. It's so much fun to see things from her perspective. And when she realizes that she's missing things, I love seeing that as well. I think it was really interesting seeing her and Tomo like meeting and interacting for the first time. That was probably one of my favorite parts of this, because she's obviously the first female high mage that has ever happened in history for them. So of course all of the male high mages are like not happy that she's there, or think that she somehow like schemed her way to the top, because of course they do. And her interaction with Tomo is kind of paralleling their interaction with her, because like she kind of dismisses him as not that important, whereas the other high mages dismiss her as kind of like not that important. So seeing kind of like those layers of, I guess, like prejudice, it's so interesting, because not only is she being like looked down on, she also actively does that to other people, and there are like flaws in her and her personality that are well displayed here, but at the same time she's just so lovable. So she's both a very lovable character that I absolutely enjoy, while at the same time having flaws and being unlikable in other ways, and I really like that about this character. Like, she is so well written. I wish more authors displayed their characters like this, because I feel like I understand her thought process so well, and I'm loving it so much. Also, her interaction with her colleagues I found incredibly interesting. I do think that it feels like it's pulling out like feminist tropes, or I guess cliches, but in an interesting way that I'm actually like really resonating with. Like, the things that happened to her have like resonate with me really well in like the way that they're described. So it is really working in this book in a way that I wasn't expecting. As for the magic, I'm quite interested in how the magic works. Skiona's first chapter is where we kind of get the majority of understanding of this magic, and watching her like see someone else perform versus how she performed, and like just the description of the magic is still really well done. I will say one of the things I loved the most about her previous novel was the way Emma Wang wrote magic. I found the descriptions of her magic to be very easy to picture and just fun to read. In this one, I'm having a little bit more difficulty with than that one. I will say it's better written than most magic in other novels. It's much easier to understand in that perspective, but I'm having a little bit more difficulty picturing it. But mind you, I'm only like 5 chapters into this book, so there's plenty of time for me to understand it better. But so far, I am really enjoying this, and I'm excited to see where it's going. There is one thing that I don't know if I like or not, because towards the end of the last chapter, I feel like it was going in kind of a romantic direction, and I don't know if I like that, because I feel like there are some hints and clues in like earlier chapters where like her aunt is kind of like pushing her to find a man, where like, is this just like women's traditional roles kind of like playing a part in the story, or is it hinting that this is gonna have a romance in it? And then in the last chapter, there was an interaction that felt like the kind of the beginning of a romance. I really hope it's not, because I kind of don't want this book to like get into that territory, because I feel like this book is about like other things, but I wouldn't hate it if it was. I don't think I would hate it if it was, but I kind of don't want it to be, which I love romances in fantasy books. Like, I really do, but I don't want this book to have a romance in it, just because of what it is. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but I'm definitely enjoying this so far. I just finished chapter 9, which I should have expected this, because chapter 9 ends with us realizing that all of their magic that they are doing is the thing that was killing Tomo's people in chapter 1. Which I completely understand now why chapter 1 had to happen. Like, completely understand now. I should have known that Emma Wang had the ability to just like completely break me. I didn't know that she would do it in the first like third of this novel. I was so excited for the magic and the magic system and how it worked, and I liked like some of the stuff leading up to that revelation, because we get to learn a little bit more about Tomo's people, and like their ancient people, they had mages of their own. They were called witches because it was the women who were the mages of their people, the women who were the magic users. And by sharing that knowledge with Tayona, she was able to do the thing that they wanted to do. But in doing so, they finally can better understand what the magic actually is. And all of those bright lights that basically like made the people fall apart in chapter 1 was the energy that was being siphoned away to create this beautiful city. And it's so I don't even know what to say because I am just completely speechless. It is one of the worst possible, like, magic systems. Like, morally, it's literally built on killing people. And yet, it's one of the most intricate and interesting. And you can't even, like, blame the people that are currently using it because they didn't know that's what it was. They were just seeing sources of energy. They couldn't tell that it was people. But now we know it's people. So where is this going? Oh my gosh. I cannot see them stopping using this magic because they live in a utopian society basically, and they're trying to expand it so that more people can live in their utopian society. But it's only possible by preying on the people who don't live in that society. I do recognize the parallels here to our world. Feels very Hunger Games in its theme, but I love it so much. I think I like this. Oh my god. I don't like this is already a 5-star book. I'm not even a third of the way into this book and it's already a 5-star book for me. I'm probably gonna finish it today and I'm so excited for it. So I finished chapter 15 and I just have so much that I'm loving this book. I feel like there was nothing quite as explosive as there was the last time, but there were quite a few things that happened in like the last 6 chapters. First of all, in this last little section, I think my favorite part was when Siona, I think that's how you pronounce her name. I always like don't know. But anyways, when Siona, she gets very emotional, right? Because she's already basically verified that what Tomo thought, that their magic is killing people outside of their little circle, manages to verify that in her own way, which was, it is what it is. But she has this breakdown, this mental breakdown, which makes a lot of sense. Like, this is literally her entire life's ambition that she realizes is built off of the backs of these foreigners, off of their lives, their blood, everything, which you can get the title from that. Brighthaven is kind of like how they call their city. So Blood over Brighthaven. Like, the title is just perfect. And anyways, my favorite part was right after that little mental breakdown that she has. Her aunt brings a doctor, an alchemist doctor, to help her, who is basically like this world's version of like a psychiatrist. And the conversation that she has with him was fantastic. I need her to be that person more often. Like, that was the funniest thing because she is just like kind of bossing him around and schooling him in his own profession in the best way possible. I absolutely loved it. But also at the same time, she's a little manic, she's a little crazy, but in a good way. And then also, I feel like it was a pretty bad burn on psychiatry and just like that profession in general and the drug industry, particularly the drug industry. So yeah, I like that a lot. That was a lot of fun. And it's just a small part of this entire book. It was a fun scene to include. In addition to that, we did get to finally meet Kara 10 years later from like when she was originally injured, and she is a little spitfire. Let's put it that way. I kind of love her, but I also kind of am glad this book is not about her because I feel like I would not like her if she was the main character. Let's just put it that way. She actually tries to knife a high mage, which is just, what? But like, I understand where she's coming from, but at the same time, really? Really, you're gonna do that? And then of course the ending, well, not the ending, but the last chapter in chapter 15, we find out that her mentor, Siona's mentor, High Mage Brigham, knew basically where the source of their power was coming from, knew that it was people on the other side that were being killed to provide this power. Not only him, but all of the archmages, as well as many other people in the government knew this, and it's basically just being covered up through religion, which is of course how they make it so that people don't ask questions. I'm just so interested in seeing what Siana does. I think I might just read the rest of the book straight through and just do an update at the end because I'm just so excited to see what happens, because honestly, I would not be surprised if she sets the entire thing on fire. The entire city, the entire like university or whatever it is, she is gonna do something. And I'm definitely there for it. I'm super excited to see where this is going. Okay, quick interlude because I'm in the middle of chapter 17 girl talk and I've realized that she's been mentioning her father a lot. Siona, not Kara. The chapter is really great. I love the interaction between the two of them. But she's been mentioning her father a lot, who is also running for office, I think. think, who like has nothing to do with her. Like they're completely estranged, but I'm kind of interested. I feel like her father is gonna play a role in the ending of the book. I don't know how yet, because like I said, they're completely estranged, but I feel like that he's gonna play a role somehow. Also, was the rape scene necessary? Because I really did not love that scene. I did not love like what happened with that particular character. Nothing there. Like I don't even want to talk about it that much because I just no, just I'm not okay with that one. Okay, not rape, sexual assault, but like still unnecessary. So I did end up finishing the book. It is so late right now, so I will talk about this more in the morning when I can think about it more clearly, but I enjoyed this so much. I ended up giving it 5 stars. I kind of knew that by like a third of the way into the book that this was going to be a 5-star book for me because I just really enjoy the themes that this book delves into. I feel like I related to these characters so much, which made me absolutely love this book. It did have a bit of a romance towards the end, and I didn't hate it. I think part of it was that Tomo and Sayana weren't in a work relationship anymore. Like their relationship had delved past that, and like he wasn't really her assistant anymore. So I was kind of like okay with it, but like leading up to it, I was a little worried about that because I did not like it when they were in a more work relationship. But I also think what worked so well for me with this, like it wasn't just pure attraction only that got the romance going. Like they actually like got to know each other and got to see each other's flaws and still liked each other despite their flaws. So I think that's what made me really like that aspect of the story. As for like the plot towards the end, it was better than I was expecting it to be honest, because I thought it was going a certain way, but there was more to it than that, and it did end up going the way that I thought it was gonna go, because I definitely thought she was gonna use the coordinates that were not allowed. Like I thought she was gonna do that in her presentation to the archmages, which of course she didn't end up doing. What she ended up doing, I personally thought was kind of stupid, because like I like the mirrors, don't get me wrong, I really like the mirrors, but at the same time, like anyone who's just seeing that without an explanation of it, how do they know what is happening there? Like there's no explanation to say like, oh, like this is where the magic is coming from. It'd be like if random screens started just showing people dying like in our world, and like that part didn't fully work for me, but it did come back. Like it did come full circle, which I really like. And speaking of coming full circle, the last scene with Tomo and Kara running away and then Kara picking up the little boy, completely full circle in the best way possible. So I did end up liking that. I felt like that was really well done. So overall, really loved this. Loved the themes that it delved into. I loved all the characters, not only because they were lovable, but because they were also both unlikable and lovable at the same time. I think the plot was good, and I think the world building was quite satisfying and good as well. So I ended up really loving this book. I definitely think it was worth the read. So it's the next day, and I feel like I should have felt less tired when I woke up this morning, but for some reason, I'm still exhausted from last night. I do think I felt a little bit rushed for this book because I do have to return it to the library tomorrow, but I still ended up really enjoying this. I think the ending is probably my least favorite part of this book. Especially there's like 2 like big scenes towards the end. There's like her presentation to the archmages, and then there's the actual scene where all the archmages and high mages are basically killed. That last scene I liked. I thought that was the scene that I was looking for. The other scene felt a bit, I don't know, it felt just idealistic to me. The reason why it worked for me in this book, despite it feeling idealistic, was we got to see the fallout from that scene, specifically the encounter with Alba. I think that was one of the most powerful scenes in this entire book, because Alba is a person that loves Sayana, absolutely loves her, practically raised her. Not only is Alba so angry with her, her Aunt Winnie won't even like come and see her in jail. Like she's a prisoner and her Aunt Winnie won't even come see her. So like I think the consequences that we see and the fallout of what she does in that first scene, I think were really well done in here, and that's part of the reason why I ended up loving this book as much as I did. On the other side of things though, I do feel like I wanted a little bit more of an emotional punch from this book that I didn't necessarily get, and I thought I would, because I really love these characters from the very beginning, because I knew kind of what was coming and I kind of expected basically all of the characters to die, especially like our 2 main characters. I didn't get as much of an emotional punch punch from like their death as I was necessarily expecting. There was just a little something missing in this. I wanted this to become like a new favorite of all time, and I don't think it is. I think it's just a really great book, and I think it's definitely a 5-star book for me, despite like that just like little icing on the cake that I'm missing to make this into like a favorite book of all time. But I still ended up really loving this. I love all of the themes that it explores, and I like that it's in like a fantasy setting. Like we can take the themes that it explores and apply it to so many different like real world situations that I think it just works really well. And I love the characters and I love the world building. I think the only thing that I didn't necessarily love in this book is probably the plot, but like this book wasn't about plot, so like that's okay. And it still had good plot, especially the last scene, like that last scene that I was talking about where all of the archmages are killed. Like that was a great plot. I mentioned, I think in an earlier clip, that I think her father is going to be involved, and he wasn't. We got to see her like little smirk where like she like calls him father in front of everyone, and they realize that she's his daughter. But at the same time, like I feel like we didn't get the fallout from that. Like I feel like that could have been a very interesting part of the plot. Was it really relevant at that point? Like if it's not going to be a big part of the story, why are we including it in the story? Like I feel like if her father wasn't like this powerful politician within their world, then the plot of the story would be exactly the same. Like it would have had the same effect, whereas something could have been done with that, and I feel like it was just like a lost opportunity. As for the writing though, I really love their writing, particular how she writes like characters' thoughts and feelings. I think was really well done. I really like that. But what I really liked about the writing style was how circular this book felt, because the very first chapter, and I know I struggled so much with the very first chapter, but it is now one of my favorite chapters because of the last chapter. In the first chapter, they were literally saying like, run to the bright haven over your blood, like leave your blood behind to get to the safety. Whereas in the last chapter, it's like the exact opposite. It's like, keep your people with you, take your blood with you, let's get away from this bright haven, which was like the safety of this world. So I loved just like the circularness of that chapter, and how the character growth for Sayana in particular really resonates with that kind of thematic elements and this like the name of the story, because Sayana at the very beginning of the novel like didn't really pay attention to the people around her. She was very much in it for like her history, her legacy, or like just helping people in general, like, but she didn't really pay attention to the people that were actually around her and how she affected their lives. And I feel like that's kind of what this book is grappling with, how we affect people in general versus how we affect those around us and our family as well. So like, I don't know, I feel like there's just so much you can go into with this book. There were a lot of quotes that I wish I could have underlined and highlighted. So I definitely think this is going to be a book that I reread at some point in the future, because I feel like I just need to do a little bit more analysis on it. I definitely ended up really loving this book, and obviously I gave this book 5 stars. So that is all I have for you. Let me know down in the comment what you thought if you've read this book. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. I post videos at least once per week, so please consider subscribing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.